Hello folks, so you have a PS5 and the HDMI port's not working. No matter what you have done, you tried different cables and everything, going in safe mode, nothing works. It still says no signal. So this is the repair that will get it going. So if you're going to safe mode by holding the power button and you hear the first and then second beep and you still have no display, then this will be the fix. Is probably to do with your HDMI port. So you'll have to be taking apart. The outside comes off just by pushing it out, and then around on the back side you have two screws. These are Torx screws, and they have a security pin in the middle, so you can get these tools on Amazon to take apart the PS4s here. I'm just going around the outside, and each screw, some of them are different sizes. The top row has about 4 screws that are about the same size, but keep order of your screws and just put them in the right order so that you can put everything back together. And later, after you repair many devices, you get into a routine and a rhythm, and you just know where things go. And then you have a kind of procedure where you put things, and then it becomes a lot easier. On this PS4, there's also a little plastic that you take off, and there are 3 connectors. One goes to your fan, and then there's also a little jumper cable that you will just wiggle to remove them and just pull up. So just detaching that, and then on the right hand side as well, because we have to get into the circuit board to have a look. There's this little screw here that this will give you access to the little compartment where you can add external hard drive to upgrade your system. And then there are some Torx screws around the outside there. I found a really good way to store your screws is put them into the device that you remove. So I'm removing this fan here, and after I remove the fan, just put those screws back into the holes where they came, and then it's really easy to remember where they go. So this is a good procedure that I've been using a lot. And there's this little bracket that kind of pops off, and then with the 4 screws off, this is the fan. It's a really nice big fan on the PS5 here. So with that off, there is a hidden screw at the top that you need to remove, and just by going on around the outside. For some reason this PS5 does have so many screws. The other version of PS4 doesn't have as many, but I kind of like this new design. It's really easy to get at the fan and clean it if you ever have to. So there's this little ribbon cable too. You have to push down the little tab and then remove it. You don't want to pull it, you have to push the tab to remove those ribbon cables. Now we have access to the top part of the motherboard, and there's a whole bunch of these little screws that you will remove, and there's one black long screw to the right in the middle as well there, and these ones are all the same size, so you don't have to really worry about getting them mixed up. They should be all good to go. With all that removed, there are some little cables that are connected to the motherboard that you can just kind of pull out. And then there's also some cables that go, there's a blue antenna cable, and that's FB, that would be for the blue one, and there's a FW for white. So you can easily remember where that. I'm taking off the metal casing, so now we can have a look at the circuit board. There's a little ribbon cable at the bottom, just push and then pull down, and we can remove that there. And then there's also the power button ribbon cable that you can remove. With all those cables removed, then we can take out the circuit board. So there we go. It is still connected to the heat sink, so we will have to remove the heat sink so that we can access the HDMI port. So there's 2 little screws that go at the back of the CPU, and then there's this little plastic bracket. With that removed, then we'll be able to pry apart the heat sink from the main board here. So we'll just pry it off. There's some liquid solder paste there, so just be careful it doesn't go anywhere. And there we go. There's a circuit board, and here's the HDMI. We have now finally access to have a look. So this will probably be the issue, is either these pins get moved, and you can see how dirty these pins are looking, and there's a lot of gunk there, and that can cause shorting out and bad connections, lots of issues there. So I'm just going through and seeing if there's any pins that move as well, so you can kind of push on these pins and see if there's any loose connections. And there we go. I found a pin. There was a couple pins on this HDMI port that were moving. The pins should not move. And what happens is when you put in the HDMI cable, it kind of jars in the inside, and then they can get loose. So I'm using isopropyl alcohol just to clean it up. Oh, that's looking a lot nicer now. Those contacts are looking good. To prevent this from happening too, I would suggest just to keep your HDMI port plugged in, and don't plug in and out your HDMI port. If you have to like transfer from a TV or other device, there are switching devices that you can buy on Amazon to prevent this from happening in the future. So to get that back on, I'm putting the pins there. I'm putting flux. So you need to use lots of flux, and I'm using a microscope as well, because this is really actually quite small, microscopic here. So you probably have to have the right tools to do it. It is possible to do it with your eyes there, but you would have to have really super good eye vision there, and it's hard to strain. So I'm using a scope that can zoom in quite clear there. I'm just going and heating up my pins and going through all of them just to reconnect them to the pads there. This repair is not too bad because the traces are still there, so it's just a matter of reconnecting all those pins that have actually become loose due to the plugging in and out of the HDMI cable, or maybe it got bumped. We're not 100% sure. So if you ever get a bridge right there like that, the best way to get rid of it is just put a lot more flux and increase the temperature of your soldering iron a little bit higher there, and it'll easily come out. So there we go. I just put more isopropyl alcohol there. Use the 95%. Don't use the 90% because you want it to evaporate after you clean up all that flux. That's looking pretty good. So all we have to do is put it back together and see if it works. There's also a Panasonic chip. Sometimes if the HDMI port is not the issue, sometimes you have to replace this chip, but this chip is quite hard to replace. It's an MN864739. But this one was working. I just putting it back all together and plugging into the cable, and we will see if it's going to be working. We got the power, and we'll just have a make sure that your cables are good. The cable's plugged in. I have my TV on here. Let's turn on the power, and we'll see. We'll press the power button of the PlayStation. We see the blue lights should go white, and the moment of truth. Let's have a look. I think it's detecting something, and yes, there we go. It's in safe mode, so that means that we have fixed the issue, and it boots up nicely. Look at that. Let's just log in here. Let's go into a profile, check it out. So if your PS5 is not working, and you've tried everything on the internet that going to safe mode and still doesn't work, it's probably your HDMI port. Okay, so if you enjoy electronics, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next video.